Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, Zoesthesia. I am Zoe. So for today's video, I'm going to talk about the pros and cons of having synesthesia. We will largely focus on the cons because I think the pros are easier to see. A lot of the cons of having synesthesia can be quite hidden, so we're going to focus more on that. Do stick around because later I'll have my friend Maike, who is a psychologist, a fellow synesthete, and a synesthesia artist, and she will share some of her findings with her coaching clients as well as her own personal experience with synesthesia and mental health. So do stick around for that. So as per usual, disclaimer, I am just a girl with synesthesia and I'm sharing what it's like for me specifically. Synesthesia is very subjective and it's very different for each person, and also our daily reminder to be kind in the comments. And in person too. Alright, so let's go. Let's talk about the cons, the downsides of having synesthesia. Distraction and hard to focus. I think a lot of people can relate to that, especially if you have ADHD or other forms of neurodivergence. I do see a lot of comments asking if it can be very annoying sometimes, and yes, it can, especially if I'm trying to focus on something else and there is some sound that is very visually jarring. It can really snap me out of whatever that I'm trying to focus on. Example would be when I was taking the Japanese language proficiency test a few months ago. I thought I was in the zone and I was really focusing on the test itself. The girl next to me accidentally kind of brushed the plastic bag that she has hanging next to her table, and that plastic sound was this like white spiky thing that was like shh, like just all over my mind's eye and immediately snapped me out of it, and I have to try my best to quickly get back into the zone so that I could finish my paper. Well, not her. It's not her fault that she accidentally brushed the plastic bag, but I do feel annoyed having to get pulled out of that thing that I was focusing on. And in case anyone is wondering, I passed the test. Another thing is when in conversation, it's also very hard for me to focus on people and what they're saying. I have friends who tell me that my eyes dot around a lot when they're talking. I don't know exactly what I'm looking at, but I'm guessing I could either be A, looking at their voice colors. So I'm switching between listening to you and looking at your voice color, and that's why I'm switching up and down a lot and my eyes move around a lot. Or B, I have another form of synesthesia called aura synesthesia. That means people in my life are colors. And for that to work, I have to get a sense of who you are to be able to assign that color. So that means like if I see someone on the train looking at the phone or reading a book or something, I don't really see a color. I need to be able to interact with a person. Then I'll be able to get a sense of who you are, and then my brain will just assign you a color or colors and shape as well. So there's like shape and movement. It really depends on the person. Yeah, it's a whole thing. So I think that could be also what my eyes were doing. I was darting around looking for information. My brain is searching for information for me to get a sense of who this person is so that it can give it a color or colors. So I think that's probably why my eyes dart around a lot. It's just a theory. I don't know. Or it could just be my friends are just very gorgeous and I'm just looking at them because they're so beautiful. Second, sensory overloads and overstimulation. And this is one of the biggest one for me. It's the biggest, the most difficult to manage, the most annoying pain in my butt thing that I have to manage on the daily. Okay, so let's math this. If you don't have synesthesia and your senses don't cross, if you hear something, your brain just have to process that sound. So it's just one sensory input. But if you have synesthesia and your senses cross and merge and blend, for example, for my chromesthesia, I would have to process the sound input, and then which gives me a visual input. So then I have to process that visual input as well. So that's double. And that's for only one form of synesthesia. Sometimes the sound can trigger two forms of synesthesia, like my auditory tactile. So that's sound input, visual input, and physical, like tactile inputs. So that's three sensory inputs that my brain has to process. But if I'm out in a place, there are sounds, there are movements, there are smell, all of which would trigger different forms of synesthesia in me. That means I have double, triple, quadruple, quintuple, I don't know, what's that, 5 times, 6 times. I have a lot more sensory inputs that my brain has to process. And that means I get fatigued very, very easily. I've been a sleepy girl my whole life. My mom said that she never had issues with me going to sleep, but she has problems with me waking up in the morning. So I would struggle going to school in the morning because I can't get up. My dad will actually have to like carry me while I'm still asleep, put me on the toilet bowl and brush my teeth for me because I just couldn't wake up. Waking up has always been a problem for me, and it still is. So every morning when I wake up, I just feel so tired still. It's very rare that I will wake up in the morning and I feel good and well rested. When I was a kid, one of the ways that I manage myself is I just go to sleep. My parents would take me to a very noisy and loud karaoke with their friends, and I would just be sleeping on the sofa. If they bring me out to some event to look at some lights during Chinese New Year, I would be asleep. My dad would have to carry me. Any crowded event, he has to carry me because then I'll be asleep. If you're wondering if I still do that now, yes, I do. But of course, I don't ask my dad to carry me anymore. But I do start falling asleep in public places the moment I sit down. And when that happens, I know it's not a good sign. It happened when I went to a sumo match last summer. I didn't even know I fell asleep. I thought I was still fighting, and I was just like... This overstimulation leads to my next point, which is the physical manifestation of being overstimulated. It took me 32 years to figure out the connection between synesthesia and how it makes me sick. Another common thing said to me by my friends is, "Why are you always sick?" Well, now I know why, because I'm always consistently overstimulated. So since I was a kid, I've been dancing. That means I'm around people all the time, around music all the time, and I'm always consistently overstimulated. During the peak of my dance activities, I will be dancing 10 hours a day. That means I'm exposed to sounds and music, loud music for 10 hours a day. And I remember there's a period of time that I would be sick every 2 weeks. I would catch a cold and then recover, and 2 weeks later, I'll be sick again. And I'm going to the doctor so consistently that I got so sick of taking medication that I just stopped eating, because just thinking about taking another pill just makes me want to vomit. I hated myself for being so weak. It's awful being sick all the time. I would also get stomach issues, a lot of stomach issues, diarrhea, vomiting, and usually when I go to the doctor, it will be diagnosed as a bacterial infection or stomach flu or something like that. The most recent terrible one was I was helping a friend out with a video shoot, and we came back to my place and we sat on the balcony and we go through the footage, we talk about the shots and everything. I was sitting out on the balcony for way too long without my earplugs. My apartment is basically next to a highway, so there's a lot of traffic sounds. And I got overstimulated by it without knowing, and I wasn't careful. And then I stepped back into the apartment to like pour myself a drink or something, and the silence was so good. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to sit here for a bit. So I sat down on my kitchen floor. Like a minute into sitting on the floor, I was like, okay, I need to lie down. So I laid down on the kitchen floor. And my friend came back in and he was like, are you okay? Why are you on the floor? Why are you dead? I just couldn't move. Basically, what I felt was like there were 1,000 million bees in my body, and they're just all buzzing. And they're buzzing so much I couldn't feel my hands, especially my arms. And I needed him to kind of like squeeze my body like this, like massage or squeeze to help me get the feeling back. I did feel better. I could sit up after that, and then we went out to have dinner. When I came back though, I had this terrible stomach ache. I couldn't move on the toilet floor. I was sitting there. I vomited once and had diarrhea 4 times, and it was just an awful, awful night. Which leads me to the next point, which is synesthesia and mental health. So I'm confused half the time. I didn't know what was going on with my body. I was like, why am I buzzing? That also does impact my mental health, because then I just find really strange reason to blame myself for it. You know, it kind of impacts my self-confidence for sure. And to expand more on synesthesia and mental health, this is where I'm going to let you guys listen to Maike. So take it away, Maike.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Zoe. Thank you so much for sending this interesting question, and I'm so happy to answer it for you because it's exactly what I do. I'm Maike. I'm a psychologist, neurodiversity coach, and synesthesia artist, and also the host of the podcast Let's Talk Synesthesia, where Zoe is my co-host. So, how does synesthesia impact someone's mental health? First of all, for a lot of people, it doesn't, and that's super cool. But my work is to shed light on the effect of synesthesia on mental health. And that is positive and negative effects. So I'm just going to mention a couple that I observed in the research of my book, or during my coaching client appointments, or the podcast interviews, or just like generally being in the synesthesia community for a while. One form that is often mentioned is mirror touch synesthesia. So that's a form where you feel the pain or the touch that you perceive in someone else in your own body. So I just stretched my nose and you might have felt that on your own nose. This was not a really bad impact, I would assume, but if you see someone being hit, someone in pain, you would feel that in your body, and that really impacts your own sense of self, your own energy level, because you go through much more stimulation and pain during one day than someone else would. So of course, that impacts how we go about life, our partner preferences. For example, someone who is injured a lot, does a lot of risky sports, and comes home with a broken nose every day. Well, not every day, but you know what I mean. Does impact you directly more than it does someone who doesn't have mirror touch synesthesia. So finding a way how to live with mirror touch synesthesia, finding a way how to live with the trauma that already happened because you didn't know you had mirror touch synesthesia is very important. That form of synesthesia where it is most important to look at the impact on mental health. Other forms are, for example, tasting words, like James Wannertone has that form. It's very rare, but some people, when they hear a sound or a word, they taste it in their mouth, and it's not just an association, it's an actual taste with texture, temperature, and the taste sensation. And that, of course, can impact your relationship to food, for example, immensely, because being in a restaurant with friends where there's sounds, people talking, conversations happening, you get flavor all the time. How will you be able to enjoy your food? We need a lot of coping strategies to understand how does it impact me? What are words that I use a lot, or the names of people that I like, but they taste like rubbish? And I'm not even exaggerating. That's actually can be a taste connection. So, and then of course, not being believed adds a whole another layer on top of, for example, taste synesthesia, because it's so out of your control when you feel it, how you feel it. The next trigger is always around the next corner, and yeah, it can have negative impacts for sure. Another form is anything tactile, like auditory tactile, for example. Some synesthetes can feel sounds and music or traffic sounds on their skin, and it will go down their spine, or they feel it tapping on their face. And that's, again, a lot of extra sensory information. It can be touched that is really uncomfortable. It can be very distracting, many different reasons. I think you get an idea of how synesthesia can also have a negative impact. A lot of the forms, a lot of the sensation to tactile, sensation to visual forms really do impact one's well-being, at least. That being said, there are a lot of positives as well when we go into therapy, into psychological coaching, and the person has just normal life struggles, but they have synesthesia as well. Using the synesthesia to overcome or to work on the normal life struggles with their synesthesia is amazing. One example is maybe if you're autistic and you have difficulties reading other people's emotion or your own emotion, but you can see the emotion in color. You will feel a feeling, and it's always blue. You see it's blue. And over time, and with the right support, you might find out that blue means anger, and yellow means sad, and red means happy. And that's not just the case for yourself, but you might be able to read the emotion of the other person because your brain already perceived the emotion. But it gives you this extra information that helps you go about life. The same for auditory visual synesthesia. I met someone on the podcast as well who described that they had a really, really hard time identifying other people's emotions. But once they realized that when they look at the voice and how the saturation of the color of the voice changes, they can detect which emotion they're feeling, and it helped them a ton. Another thing is if you have a meltdown, panic attack, anxiety, and you have any form of visual synesthesia, it might help you to calm down. So if you listen to a song during a meltdown and you can watch the visuals, a bit like the Windows Media Player from when we were younger, that can really help you calm down because it's your innate language. What your brain produces, the colors and shapes it produces is very familiar. It can be very calming and soothing. Okay, another aspect that we could mention is maybe it's not the intensity of one form that would have a big effect on your well-being, but maybe if you have a lot of forms like myself. So if I have period cramps or other pain and I also see the pain, and then I also listen to music and see the music. I have ticker tape synesthesia as well. So that means when I speak or when someone else is speaking, I see the words written out in my mind's eye. My inner monitor is really just crowded with words and sounds and colors. And I think my main takeaway from my mental health interviews and the coaching clients I see is once you become aware of your synesthesia, once you listen to other people describe it, you understand kind of like the outlines of your synesthesia. Where does it start? What do I experience? What is common? What is not so common? How can I give myself more grace? And how can I accommodate myself in daily life better? Because it's one thing that we are not taught. Like we don't go into a drugstore and there are products for synesthetes to protect their body from the daily triggers. There is no handbook yet that teaches you how to protect yourself as a synesthete, because it's not the common thing. It's very niche, and even in our niche, it's very unique to everybody. Everybody experiences synesthesia differently, and what is comfortable to you might be uncomfortable to someone else. So those are the people I speak with in my psychological coaching practice. If you just want to be in a safe space for synesthetes, neurodivergent adults, just leave me a message on my website, and I'm so looking forward to working with you. Bye.
Yay! Thank you, Maike. How good is her voice? I really like her voice. It's very like creamy and round and very comfortable for me. I like it. So Maike helped me beautifully transit from the downsides of having synesthesia to the more good side of having synesthesia. Like what she mentioned, synesthesia can be a tool in terms of like reading people's emotions and things like that. And I definitely use it with like my friends and my family, because I would see their color, and if their color changes, I'll be like, what's wrong? Did something happen? Because what I notice is usually a person's color doesn't really change very drastically. And if it changes very drastically, usually something traumatic happened to them and they're not sharing or something. And I would be able to see it in their color, and I would check if they're okay. Another thing that I use my synesthesia with is definitely for my creative projects. So I definitely use my synesthesia with dancing. I was checking up on the website, the synesthesiatree.com. It's not really super well researched yet, but they call it like kinetic synesthesia. Basically, like my own body movement will be perceived as a shape. If I see someone else dancing, I don't really perceive a shape. But if I'm dancing, then it's perceived as a shape or a texture or something. So I would use that to remember choreography. I would memorize it like, okay, it's a circle, it's a round to a sharp, to a pointy, to a block, to a wave, to a mist, to something like this. So I kind of remember the sequence based on the shape and the texture, and then I'll match the sequence to the shape and the texture of the music. So with the counts and the beats, I kind of like match them up, and then that helps me remember, especially when the body movement shape and the sound shape, they are the same. That's amazing to me. That's so easy for me to remember. And I remember I would feel so comfortable because it's like, they match. It feels so good. It's like putting in the final piece of a jigsaw puzzle. It fits perfectly. But that's how I used to memorize choreography. But the downside of that is some dance genres like locking. For the life of me, I cannot remember locking choreography because every single step feels the same to me. They're all round, they're all circles, they're all balls. I can't remember them. I can't match them to the music. It's all the same thing, and I just cannot remember. And also I use the fact that I can see the music for like my timing as well. One of my dance senior, he was training us at that time, and he was teaching us how to be precisely on time. So he said, like, when you are dancing, for example, the beat is like boom, you have a boo, ooh, so it's like a range of sound, right? He doesn't want us to hit at the beginning of the boom or the end of the boom. He wants us to hit it right in the middle of the boom. And that's the precise timing that he wants us to hit. And I remember I was like, oh, got it. Because I could see it. So sometimes, yeah, the beat move like this, or the count is like this, and I can see it as like a spectrum, and then just have to aim for the middle. Sometimes it pushes out this way, so I just have to hit when the shape is at its biggest or the most saturated, and that would be like in the middle of the beat. So I wouldn't say it's easy for me to do it. I mean, it's easy for me to see the timing that he wants me to hit, but the execution is a whole different thing. And another way that I use synesthesia as a tool is something that you guys have all been watching and enjoying, which is how I produce and edit my videos. Maybe a lot of you don't know, but I actually went to film school, so I have a degree in creative producing, and visuals and filmmaking was my thing. When I was in Singapore, I used to produce dance concept videos for my dancer friends back home. To be quite honest, I'm not exactly sure how I use synesthesia, but I do know that I kind of use it to find a pocket. Like every song or every project that I work with, there is a pocket. I just have to find that pocket, and every cut that I make, every music choice that I have, how the shots are being composed, the coloring of the film, everything has to fall into that pocket. And when it does, everything is cohesive. And the pocket could be a style, or it could be an emotion that I want to evoke using the video, or that I think I somewhat use my synesthesia to find the pocket. And of course, the more obvious one is like I will use the color of the music to match with the coloring of the film, or like what I wear or what the dancers should be wearing to kind of fit that song. Or I will add, for example, if the song is very airy and light, I'll kind of add like a little glow to the video, so it softens it, so it matches the way the song looks to me. So it's a great tool, I think. All right, the final thing, how do I manage the downsides of having synesthesia? To be honest, I am still learning. I'm still trying to figure out where my limit is, and I'm still trying to be aware of some signs and symptoms that will begin in me whenever I'm starting to get overstimulated. They are usually very hard to catch, and sometimes I'm not quite sure what to catch. Or I know some of the symptoms that shows up when I'm starting to get overstimulated, but I don't know all of them. So sometimes when it's a new sign or a symptom, I miss it completely, or I chalk it up to something else. Like I went to yoga class, the music was too loud, it gave me a headache. I thought it was maybe I was dehydrated or something, so I drank a lot of water, but the headache didn't go away. Something like that. For me, I think one way I learned how to manage and cope is just to be more aware of some of the signs and symptoms that will start when I'm getting overstimulated. Second way, which is I don't go anywhere without it, earplugs. I have a earplug for every occasion, for different levels of overstimulation, and of course, noise cancelling headphones and earphones. So when I'm very overstimulated, I listen to water sounds. Water sounds are my favorite. If I'm out by myself, I definitely have noise cancelling headphones. So if any of you spot me in the wild and you call out to me and I didn't respond, it's probably because I'm blocking my ears and I don't hear anything. Third is remove myself from the situation. Whatever it is that's overstimulating me, get away. Get out of there. That's for me, just like, get out of here. But that is not always easy. If I'm alone, it's easy for me to just like, boop, get away. But if I'm with friends, then it makes it a little bit harder because I don't want to be a brat and be like, I can't be here. And then like have everybody move with me. One method I do is you guys can stay, but I will have to go. All right, and that is all for this video. Thank you for listening to me ramble on. So for any of you who are a synesthete or just a neurodivergent person without synesthesia, and if you need some help with your mental health, you can reach out to Maike. I'll put a link to her website down below, and you can send her a message and a free introductory session. And also, I just want to thank everyone who has subscribed, watched the video, left me a comment. I really appreciate them. I read them all. I don't respond to all of them. I try to respond as much as I can, but do know that I'm reading all of them and I'm very appreciative of you guys. I hope all these long form videos have been useful in helping people understand how complex synesthesia is. There are way too many misconceptions and misunderstandings, and I just hope that people can understand it a little bit more before jumping to any conclusions. As for my next long form video, I'm not quite sure what I'll be touching on, so if you guys have any ideas, just drop it in the comments. Anything you want me to explain more in detail, learn about more, yeah, and I'll be happy to share. Alright, that's it. See you guys in the comments. Bye!